Welcome to the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. I'm Sean Aylmer. With so much of our lives online now, we tend not to notice when things are just working as they should. It's only when something goes wrong that we get a glimpse of just how complex the infrastructure is behind the scenes. In June last year, Fastly, one of the biggest cloud platform providers in the world, suffered an outage. Many major websites went offline for almost an hour, from the UK government to Amazon and the New York Times. Just shows how important that infrastructure is. It's a powerful reminder of how dependent we are on this technology in the digital age. Fastly learnt from the outage and has continued to grow with customers across 75 markets. In Australia, that includes 9 and 7, the big media groups, the National Rugby League and Kogan.com, just a few examples. Artur Bergman is the founder and chief architect of Fastly. He's normally based in Denver, Colorado, but is in Australia for a short visit. Artur, welcome to Fear and Greed.
Thank you very much, Sean. Thanks for having me.
Now, preparing for this interview, I found a stat that I think is staggering. In fact, it's very difficult to get your head around. Fastly's network has the ability to handle more than 1.4 trillion, with a TR, trillion requests per day. That's extraordinary.
It's a large number. When you take any of these numbers and do them per day or per year or per month or per hour, they become very large. And so we tend to think of it in per second. But even then, it's pretty large numbers.
Well, yeah, so just in layman's terms, for someone like me, can you take me through exactly what Fastly does? So when I interact with the New York Times website, for example, what part does Fastly play?
So the fundamental physics problem that we help our customers overcome is speed of light. And we all think speed of light is very fast. And it is fast. But speed of light from Australia to the east coast of the US, round trip time is a couple of 100 milliseconds, which is not that fast when you're waiting for something to load or when you want to interact with a website. It gets even slower by the fact that the fiber lines under the ocean don't go perfectly straight between us and where the servers are. So what Fastly does as an edge cloud platform is we have servers all around the world. We have some in Sydney and Melbourne, for example. And so when you go and interact with New York Times, you actually end up going to the servers that are closest to you. And those servers will store a copy of the content that you're accessing and will execute customer code close to you to assemble your online experience, whatever content you're trying to view or whatever interaction you're trying to have, so that most of it can be done locally a couple of 10, 20 milliseconds away from you instead of a couple of hundred.
Okay, you have just answered a question I've wondered about. I used to live with a guy who laid fibre optic cable for a living. And he, he'd get on boats and they'd lay out the fibre optic cable, who is an engineer. And what I could never work out, though, was if we're trying to get to the East Coast, that's a long way. And fibre optic cable doesn't just go straight. I mean, it's on the bed of the ocean, so obviously it's going up and down. But what you're actually saying is when I'm going to New York Times, I'm not going to California or I'm not going to New York. I'm probably going to Sydney.
When you're going to New York Times, yes, you're going to Sydney.
Wow, quite incredible. Now, consumers expect instant access to data, but they also expect their data to be customized and for it to be secure, obviously, is a really big part of it. How much does that slow down this transmission speed?
So there is a inherent trade-off there, which is if I want to make it personalized to you, I have to run code to make that happen.
Yep.
And traditionally, I would have to run that code in my own data center. So either I built a lot of central data centers all around the world, which is very expensive and hard to maintain, or I would just have to decide, should I personalize this and incur the latency cost, or should I serve it as fast as possible? And what's really cool about the Edge Cloud platform and our Edge Compute is that it allows our customers to do that personalization on the edge, whether that is, just the paywall and all the things for you just accessing the site, personalizing the content, personalizing recommendations. So because you have compute at the edge, so the edge being Sydney or Melbourne or Perth, right, or any of the 100 locations we have in the world, you can take that content, that is a copy of it, it's cached, and you can work on that content, personalize it, and only give out what you need locally. It's historically been a very difficult trade-off, but we're helping our customers solve that so they don't have to do that trade-off.
Talking about it makes me wonder, can technology actually get faster? Is the speed of light the fastest we can get to? So I accept the trade-offs that we're talking about here, but can technology get faster than fiber optic cable?
It can, technically, but we don't know how to go faster than speed of light.
Yep.
And so there's a ratio of how fast light travels in fiber optic versus vacuum, and there is a difference there. But you're still talking a fairly substantial delay when you try to go around the world.
Stay with me, Artur. We'll be back in a minute. My guest this morning is Artur Bergman, the founder and chief architect of Fastly. Now, I mentioned the Fastly outage, which happened just over a year ago. It's a remarkable story because of what it triggered. Can you just tell me, again in layman's terms, what happened, but then what you've learnt from that? The lessons out of that episode for you as an organisation.
We have covered pretty in detail what happened, and it is like any complex failure. It is when multiple things go wrong and the compensating controls do not act as they should.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, it was a piece of code that had been released, fully tested. We have a very controlled way of releasing new code to our network that takes a very long period of time. This code had been released. It had passed all the tests. And then one of our customers configured a service in a way that no one had ever configured a service, or at least in the previous 10 years. And then that triggered a crash. And it was a very large customer with a lot of traffic. So that crash was very wide. So there was multiple steps in the process here that kind of missed catching this event. And we have a trade-off decision we as a company have made, which is when our servers end up in a situation where we don't know fully what is going on.
Yep.
We have a choice. We have a choice of trying to serve whatever content we can, or we have a choice to stop everything. And because the risk if you don't stop is we don't actually know what's being served, which would be extremely bad. So our policy is we stop. What we really have learned from this is a focus on automated recovery. We've done a very good job in the past of trying to prevent these things, but ultimately, if something happens, we need to recover very fast.
Yeah.
And we have also accelerated our switch to using our edge compute product for all of our services, which has built-in protections so that when something like this happens, and for customers who now have started to migrate, this is what will happen, only the request that caused the crash would have been stopped. But it's really that combo of that, and then the combo of a much more solid underlying modern platform, which we think all online services over time need to move to, using strict isolation. It's kind of like, if you remember a long time ago when a tab in your browser crashed, your entire browser would crash.
Yeah.
And then we got to a point where if one tab crashes, only that tab crashes.
Great analogy.
Yeah, and that's what we're doing on the server side.
Yeah. Okay. What about like for individual companies needing to protect their online experience? Increasingly digital platforms are the only form of interaction between a business and consumer, so it's really important. What should they be doing to make sure the experience is great? They're going to be using services like Fastly, but from their side, what should they be doing?
When you're designing your online presence, I think a lot of companies think of the functionality first, and then they think of security, reliability, and performance after.
Yep.
And by switching that thought process and accepting that if your site is slow, it's not really, people aren't going to use it. If your site isn't secure, people aren't going to use it.
Yeah.
And certainly if it's not available, people are not going to use it. So making it just a very clear requirement that for this product or for this experience to be successful, it has to be performant, it has to be reliable, and it has to be secure. And that should be a high-level business KPI, not something that you think about after the fact.
Yeah. Okay, my final question for you, Artur, is where are we going with this? I have learnt a lot in the last 10 to 12 minutes talking to you about the speed of light and how fastly operates its businesses. Where will we be in 10 years, though? Some of these latencies that you're talking about and personalizations and that, are we going to get a lot more of that and somehow the technology will allow faster times? Where do we get to?
The underlying constant of speed of light is the limiting factor, and
Yeah.
we just are finding new technologies to work around that and make it magically seem like we're more connected than physics sets the limit of. And I think that's really what's occurring, right? Is as you build new applications, as you build new tools, having both the business and engineering take into account, and this becomes extremely important when you're trying to become an international business, right? If all I'm serving is my customers in Sydney, I don't really need to care, right? But most businesses don't just want to serve one city. They want to go to multiple cities and then the rest of the world. And that's where I think building your new tools, building your new platforms with these kind of constraints in mind, coupled with the need for performance and security and reliability anywhere in the world. If you do it right, you have a product that will scale to anywhere.
Yeah, fascinating. Artur, thank you very much for talking to Fear and Greed.
Thank you so much for having me, Sean.
That was Artur Bergman, founder and chief architect of Fastly. This is the Fear and Greed Daily Interview. Remember, this information is general in nature and you should seek professional advice before making any investment decisions. Join us every morning for the full episode of Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Sean Aylmer. Enjoy your day.